Hello. I'm sitting here, as I do many days now, contemplating life, the future, reliving some of the past, and just wondering what tomorrow holds. "15 months ago, the love of my life, a wonderful woman, passed away from glioblastoma. I still haven't come to terms with her loss. It's been a long grieving process, and probably because before she passed, I spent 15 months looking after her. Well, maybe 14 plus, because the last 9 days we did put her into a hospital, hospice type care, at her request. She didn't want to die at home. Our son was still living with us. December 2021, December 19th to be exact, 2021. We were to learn that she had a tumor, a brain tumor. We didn't know it right away. She actually was having trouble with her right hand, twitching a bit, and a little trouble talking on the right side of her mouth. We initially thought she was having a form of a stroke. We took her into emergency, and they did the stroke protocol. And of course, the doctor was good, the emergency doctor was good that night. He knew that it wasn't a stroke, and he took it upon himself to do a CAT scan at this hospital. They didn't have an MRI, but they had a CAT scan. And he confirmed that there was something going on in her brain. And he arranged to have her transferred to a local hospital in a nearby city that had an MRI. I still didn't know what was going on at this point. That night they did do the MRI, and they did confirm that there was a tumor of sorts in her brain. Of course, they didn't know what it was at the time. And they sent us home. I'm sure they gave us some type of medication at that time, probably for seizure type scenarios. This was, again, a week before Christmas, so as you can imagine, the healthcare system doesn't work too quickly. We had to wait well into January to hear from a neurosurgeon, and we went in and saw him, and based on the MRI, CAT scans, and everything, he felt that he needed to go in and do surgery, and that he could do the surgery because it was up on the left side of the head, in an area that was accessible, and remove the tumor. Of course, we were scared. At this point in time, we didn't know that it was glioblastoma. We just knew she had a tumor that had to be removed. She went in on, so that was December 19th. She actually went in on January 19th. So it took a month. He did work hard to get her in quickly after he saw her to do the operation at Travinsky Hospital in Hamilton. And we were in there first thing in the morning, and whatever happened that day, they didn't wind up taking her in. I sat with her all day at the hospital, waiting for them to take her in. She didn't get in. She was not happy. They kept her overnight, which was the best thing to do. They just decided to keep her. They were going to operate first thing, and this happened on January 20th, now 2022. Within less than 48 hours, I was picking her up from the hospital to take her home. You know, they had opened her up, quite an incision, removed the tumor. And of course, the doctor said everything went well, and she came out. She looked like hell, but she was moving and walking and trying. That's one thing about my wife, Jo. She was a fighter. In context, she retired in 2020. She had been an RN for over 30 years, Credit Valley Hospital in Mississauga. So she only got a couple of years before this set in. Anyways, we got her home, and over the next number of weeks, her scar, everything, her head healed quite well. So the surgeon had done a nice job. And in early February, so I guess that'd be a couple of weeks after the operation, we were called into Travinsky now to see the neurosurgeon. When we got in there, we knew something wasn't right, because a whole panel of people were waiting for us. Radiologist, radiation guy, chemo guy, neurologist, specialized nurses, all that type of thing. I knew something wasn't right. It was at that time that they told us that they wouldn't tell us initially she had glioblastoma. That pissed me off. And I had to push them to find out exactly what it was that she was dealing with. Of course, I didn't know what glioblastoma was. I had to Google it. What they did tell us was that there was no cure. They didn't know how long she would live. And they give you the big spiel about, quality of life. And, part of the process, with this glioblastoma is that, you have to do 6 weeks of radiation and chemo. So we started that in early March. And every day I was driving her, from Fort Erie, we were living in Fort Erie at the time, into Travinsky and Hamilton to partake in this chemo and radiation. As we were to learn, as time went on, the neurologist that we were dealing with, in my personal opinion, was useless when it came to giving us facts. He always skirted around, really didn't treat us like, people. We were subjects. He had a lady, I'm not going to mention names, another neurologist, I guess, that worked under him. She was better to deal with, a little more compassionate. But between the two of them, we could never get answers. Basically, all we were going in for, every month or so after the radiation and chemo was to do the blood work, because they had put us on, not put us, but my wife on a chemo pill. I forget the name of it, tetrazone or something like that. And it was, I guess it's powerful in its own right, and they had to watch the blood work and stuff like that. So for the first 6-7 months, my wife's blood work was always good, and they kept her on it. But even that particular pill could only be taken, I guess, the standard protocol for glioblastoma was resection, chemo radiation for 6 weeks. Then they put you on this chemo pill for about 6 months. And, as I said, we weren't getting any answers. They weren't giving us any hope. They weren't indicating any trials, anything at this point that my wife could try. Basically, as I was to learn, and I was there all the time. Obviously, I had to be there. I had to take my wife everywhere. She had stopped driving. They were waiting for her to die, to get sick and die. We all understood that she was going to die. My wife understood that. I didn't want to believe it. She was only 56 when they first found the tumor. So, come October 2022, they took her off the final pills, and basically they sent us home. And they said, the other issue was this aspect of MRIs. I've been researching, obviously, glioblastoma a lot. Once I found out about it, I started investing a lot of time into finding out about glioblastoma, because I was prepared to take my wife anywhere in the world if I felt that there was some kind of hope, some type of a treatment that would prolong her life with quality of life. Not just prolong her life in a zombie state, but quality of life. I mean, obviously. Javinsky did nothing. They offered nothing. I confronted them on that after she died, but that's a story for later on. So anyways, October, then all of a sudden we find out, your next MRI is April of 2023. So you got October, November, December, January, February, March. Anyways, you can count months and months and months. And, a good cancer hospital will try to do, especially for glioblastoma patients, because the whole aspect of glioblastoma is that it will reoccur, and you want to keep an eye on it and treat it so that you maintain that quality of life. Well, if you're not doing the MRIs, who the hell knows what's going on? I fought them on that, and trying to get the MRIs moved up, because I could start to see a change in my wife. October was the last time she made a trip. My daughter was in Ottawa, and we drove out to Ottawa. Stayed in a hotel. I couldn't get a place. We got a nice place. I wanted to get a good place for her, like a bed and breakfast type place. But it had stairs to get up to the room. So that was a struggle for her. And, but she was managing, you know. She fell once, like forwards, and that I was always there with her, but she was worsening. Anyways, October, November, into December, nothing. We never heard anything from the hospital, the doctors, nothing. And she got worse. We were able to make it through to Christmas, but her mind, you know, everything with glioblastoma, you know, you can imagine as a tumor starts to grow, you know, it's got tentacles. It's like a weed. You can take out, you know, pull out the weed, but you can't get the roots because they keep growing. You know, these cells keep moving into the brain. That's why no one survives glioblastoma. They can slow it. But if you have glioblastoma, you're going to die. So, yeah, into December, I mean, it was affecting her moods and things like that. I mean, everything was changing. It wasn't, you know, at times she wasn't the lovely woman that I had married. It wasn't her fault. I didn't care about her, you know, her changes in moods and that. She was still my beautiful Joanne. But I was getting on, you know, the hospital about these MRIs, and they finally moved it till, oh, even before that. We got into January now of 2023, and she really started to take a turn for the worse and struggling walking. Her whole right side was slowing down, numbness. She had lost the use of her hand. She couldn't feel her foot, and this had been going on for months. Because that's what it does, right? The left side of the brain controls the right side of the body, and however this was affecting that aspect. And, you know, she started falling in the bathroom. You know, she fought for her independence, going to the bathroom, cleaning herself up and everything. It just took her longer, but she was able to do it. But she fell a few times, and me and my son would have to go in and help her. You know, finally, you know, I called the hospital again, and I said, you know, this is getting out of hand. It's been, you know, a number of months. There's been no MRIs. I'm telling you, my wife is getting worse. They finally relented, and they got a new MRI scheduled for early March. Yes, early March. And then all of a sudden, miraculously, the doctor now wanted to see my wife. Of course he wanted to see her. They waited. They let the months pass. She wasn't on medications other than seizure. Nothing to control the tumor growth. So that this time when I took her back, I had to take her back in a wheelchair. She was still of reasonably sound mind, so she understood, and she could still talk. But I was pissed with these doctors, these neurosurgeons, Dravinsky. They just talk down to you. And basically at this point, you know, it was like, there's nothing more we can do for you. The only reason I had taken her in to see this neurosurgeon at that point in time was that we had gone in for this MRI and we wanted to know the results. We wanted to see the results. They would never show us the MRIs. And of course, when we got there, oh, I don't have access to the MRI. And what the hell are we doing here, doctor? Oh no, I don't need the, you know, basically he was making determinations now that, I'm sorry, Mrs. McMillan, you don't have long. It's not looking good for you. Yeah, well, thanks, Captain Obvious. You know, you haven't seen her in months. You supposedly hadn't seen the MRI, but you're making these determinations. Of course you've seen the MRI. You're just not willing to show it to us. They knew I was not happy. His lady companion neurosurgeon, I would look at her from time to time and she would put her head down. They knew what was going on. And they knew that I knew. Anyways, that was early March, and we brought her home, and it just went downhill from there. You know, she could no longer get up. I had to get up. I had to help her every few hours, day and night, to the bathroom, to the point where I was picking her up and almost carrying her to the bathroom, to the toilet. It just got to be too much for her. She was a proud woman. She had spent her life working in obstetrics, helping all the new mothers with their babies. She didn't deserve to be treated like this by Jervinsky. Anyways, we had through Niagara region, you know, the healthcare people and that. In her last couple of weeks at home, they came in, you know, helped me with cleaning her up, you know, checking on her vitals and things like that. And thankfully, Fort Erie Hospital, it's a small, used to be a full-blown hospital, but I think now it's just like a day in and out hospital. But they also have an area for older people that are dying. I forget the name of it. It's like a hospice. And there was a doctor, Dr. Shear, who's well known in that part of Niagara for dealing with people that were going to die. And I contacted him, and he came to the house twice. So he's very good. You know, when's the last time a doctor ever did house calls? But this doctor came to our house. After the first visit, he said to me that, you know, I'm going to arrange for a bed for her. So when you're ready, you let me know. He knew that she didn't have long left. I knew. She lasted about another week at home. And she just got to the point where, as I say, every night, every couple hours, I'd have to hear her calling me to come in and help her to the bathroom and stuff like that. And she just had enough. She just didn't want to do it anymore, and I don't blame her. She didn't want, as I say, she didn't want to die at home. Some people want to die at home. Maybe if my son wasn't there, we would have looked at that, but she didn't want to be, my son, you know, he's younger. At that point, he was only, 24. It's just not the image she wanted to leave, you know, one of her children. So we took her in, had the ambulance come and take her. And she was okay for a couple of days eating and drinking and that, but, you know, with the brain controls everything. So as it starts to die, it affects, you know, all the components of your body. So she went through the classic dying process. She stopped eating, she stopped drinking, and she passed. She passed away on March 26th, 2023. Thankfully, you know, our daughter's birthday was March 27th. So it's almost like She passed away before 6 a.m. in the morning on the 26th. I had seen her at 8 o'clock that night, and she was sleeping more, and, she was having a very difficult time talking. But, the hospital there, nobody told me anything either, so that's my whole contention, with the healthcare system and trying to understand, what my wife was going through. But, I saw her the Saturday night before she died on the Sunday morning. I was there about 8 o'clock at night. That she wouldn't eat anything. She wasn't drinking. Very little, anyways. And I knew when I left that night, I said, I got to get up early on Sunday and get in there and see her. I was up at 5:30 and ready to go into the hospital, and I got the call that she had just passed away. So yeah, I wasn't there when she passed away because nobody told me how bad it really was. But I also think that my wife, it was her way of the way she wanted to go. She didn't want to be a burden on anybody. She was always like that. She was a lovely woman. Gentle soul. I was the luckiest man in the world to have her as my wife. And now, obviously it's difficult. I'm in a new house. But back to her passing. As I say, they were good at Fort Erie Hospital. We had some pre-arrangements for her burial in Milton, where her family was. And we never heard from Javinsky again. I did send them a letter. I did let them know I was not happy with the care that they had provided to her, with the fact that there were no trials. They weren't upfront with our questions. Once they determined that she was going to die, they went through the basic standard of care. They didn't try to do anything more for her. And then they move on to the next patient. Is that the state of healthcare in Ontario now? Probably. At Javinsky, they have the gall to send me now, in the mail, you need to donate to help find a cure for cancer. Yeah, sure. I told them, my wife and I, we're reasonably educated people. We're old enough, we've been through the grinder of life. We knew, once it was confirmed that it was glioblastoma, that she was going to die. I had hoped, and she had hoped. Some people can live 3 years, if you're lucky, 5 years. The average, though, is 12 to 18 months. My wife lasted, from the time we found out about the tumor, which December of 2021 till when she died, so January, February, March, 15, 16 months. So she never stood a chance. I believe the surgery did help. buy her a few months of extra quality of life time, I would highly recommend anyone with glioblastoma, if they can, safely go through the surgery to remove the tumor, do it. It will buy some time. I'm not sure about the radiation and chemo. I know there's some marker genes and things like that in the tumors and that have to line up for radiation and probably more chemo to really be able to help address the tumor. These tumors are very resilient and can overcome the chemo and the radiation. They are a true weed in that you think you got them and they just come right back. And this time they come back twice as much. So the scientists need to find the reason why glioblastoma. I guess that's my hope before I die, is to know why my wife got glioblastoma. It comes down to the cells in the brain. Like most cancers, takes one cell, I guess, to not properly die off, regenerate, and what have you, and it goes rogue, and it starts a process of just overtaking. And because it's in the brain, I'm not going to get into all the specifics. I mean, you can look up glioblastoma, though. Spend a few minutes and read about it. You'll see how devastating a brain tumor it really is. But these glios are bad news. And you have that blood-brain barrier in the skull that a lot of medicines can't get through to attack the tumors. So, they need to find a way to overcome the blood-brain barrier if they're going to use medications. Or, really before they do anything, they need to determine what causes glioblastoma. It's like anything. If you can find the cause, then you can work on a cure. So it comes down, in my mind, to the scientists looking, at the very cellular, neutron level. I'm not a medical person per se. It's just, I've spent a lot of time, I watch everything I can about it, learning about it, even to this day. It's not going to help my wife, obviously, but, trying to figure out what's going on. So bottom line with Dravinsky is I'll never forgive them for how they treat glioblastoma patients. I certainly won't donate to them. I would have, if they were upfront, honest, and they would have given, some type of hope. They never gave us hope. There was no trials, there was nothing. There's things out there. I think this electrical thing called Optune has now been okayed here in Canada. I think it comes down to money. They don't want to spend the money. You're going to die anyway, so we'll just go through the motions with you. Sucks to be you. You got glioblastoma. We'll do the bare minimum. But I did look into, in the States especially, some of these big cancer hospitals, Johns Hopkins and some of these other places. Because if they had something there that I thought would help my wife, we would have been driving down there. I would have been taking her down there. But the Americans and how they do things down there, they don't have the answers either when it comes to glioblastoma. Maybe other cancers, they could be a little further ahead. But when it comes to glio, it's just, the Americans are very good at promoting things and making it look like, bring your patient here and we're going to rock your world. Well, no, that's not the case. They'll rock your bank account. But when you get cut through all the gloss and everything, they still die 12 to 18 months, maybe 20 months. You know, I do believe if this Optune thing had been given to my wife, she could have bought some time with that. Immunotherapies, you know, if you can find the right person in that. So anyways, there's nothing. Right now, there's nothing anywhere in the world that will buy definite quality of lifetime. It's a crapshoot. So I try to put that behind me now. I mean, obviously nothing I can do about it. Yeah, I went through the first 60 years of my life, no cancer and things like that. Sadly, just before my wife was diagnosed in December, my sister, a couple months before, was diagnosed with terminal breast cancer. And she died last September 2023. So she lived a number of months longer because breast cancer and that they have more trials. They were giving her different things. Her situation though is a little different because she smoked all her life. I tried to get her to quit, but she couldn't. And it caught up with her. And it killed her. And she died at 61 years of age. Still too young. So that was a double whammy, you know. 2021, my sister calling me to tell me she had been diagnosed with terminal breast cancer, and it eventually spread and it killed her. And a couple months later, you know, you're already dealing with the fact that you're going to lose your sister. And out of the blue, with no signs whatsoever before, you know, my wife has these twitches and that, and it turns into terminal brain cancer, and she's gone. That's what glioblastoma does. We need to do more. Anyways, we're now 15, 16 months since she died, and I'm still struggling with the loss of my wife. I never really got to say goodbye the way I would like to. She didn't want to die, obviously. She would ask me, why is this happening to me? And I didn't have any answers. I had no clue. I don't know why it's happening. But it not only takes her life, it takes her partner's life too. A big part of me went with my wife. And I sit alone now, every day, remembering, talking to my wife, sometimes as if she's still here. Yeah, I need therapy, but I don't take therapy. You second guess yourself, of course. Now looking back, there's so much more I could have did for my wife. Should have did. I'm happy, you know, we were able to do a nice trip to Europe, a nice river cruise, and that in 2019. I'm glad we were able to do that. You know, we dedicated our lives, like most people, to raising our children, paying the bills, working towards retirement. And just when we retire, she gets sick and dies. You know, I'm 63 now. Now I have to go through the rest of my life alone. At this age, it's not worth. I'm not looking to get into another relationship and that. It wouldn't be fair to that person. And although when you get married, you know, they say until death do us part. For me, there is no death do us part, it's forever. I loved her and I still love her. So, as I say, I could never put another woman through me at this stage of my life. It wouldn't be fair. So I'm, dealing with being alone now. That's just the way it has to be. I lost my best friend, Sam, the same year, 2021. He had a massive heart attack. So I lost the ability to talk to him. Would have been nice to have him here now. Some other friends I had, they just moved on in life and you lose touch with them. It's not for a lack of trying on my part, but sometimes I guess people just move on. So that's my story right now of glioblastoma, the loss of my wife. The only thing that keeps me going now is my 2 kids. I'm trying to put up a brave face for them. I'm sure they see through that sometimes, but I'm trying. I need to get them set up in life and what have you, and I hope they still do a little bit of traveling and things like that. It's you got to be motivated for that. I'm not there yet. But everything I do now is to honor my wife. It's getting dark. I purposely have the light like this because I don't want you to see me fully. I don't sleep well, so everything starts to show on a person. I'm proud that I was able to be there for my wife and look after her for as long as I could until she passed away. I know she would have did that for me. She would have did a better job than me, but I did my best. She knows that. One day I'll join her. And if there is a creator, if there is a God, maybe we can be together again one day, but who knows? I don't know. It's easy to be pessimistic about those types of things. Why would they take such a, she was a sweet woman. She never bothered anybody. Anybody that met her liked her. Hard worker, good mother, good wife. Gone. So yeah, there's no guarantees in life, people. Hug your loved ones. You don't know what tomorrow holds. Thanks for listening. Cheers.